Social media, it can be a delicate balancing act for parents. You want to respect your child's privacy, but at the same time, you have to ensure their privacy.
That's right. You might
Safety,
have all of it. You might have the urge to sneak a peek at who your teen is following or even which trends they're tracking. But monitoring your child's social media can actually backfire if you're not careful. So joining us now is life coach Elizabeth Pearson. Elizabeth, when it comes to access, Meta just announced plans to restrict teen Instagram and Facebook accounts from harmful content. But sort of as a parent, I mean, how can you even start that dialogue with a child about what it actually takes to be safe online?
Yeah, well, I think it's great for parents to really just kind of accept the world that we live in and that abstinence is not realistic, I think, for kids to be totally off social media. So if you express a genuine interest in their experiences, like we do at school or any other area of their life, it can be something that establishes trust, and then you can create healthy boundaries. Because as we all know, boundaries are these wonderful, flexible things that kids need.
Absolutely. How young should you start that dialogue, and how, as your child progresses from maybe a tween to a teen, how do you encourage them to confide in you?
I think this starts maybe not as young as your daughter, Morgan, but like very, very young. I think if you foster an environment of open communication and they're not always living in fear that if they tell you something, it's going to have some sort of reverberal negative effect.
Right.
This is something that's going to set you up for success when you do have to broach the subject of social media. You're not there to control them or micromanage them, but you are there to parent them. Mm-hmm. And that may mean getting involved.
It's interesting that you bring up that point that this isn't just about social media. It's sort of about a larger dialogue. I remember growing up, I think one of the best things my mom ever said to me was like, Morgan, nothing you can say will scare me. Nothing you can say will make me run, right? And I just thought that was such a cool concept. Right. But I have to say, from my perspective, I mean, is privacy even safe for kids under a certain age? Because I have no problem feeling like I need to know all the things that are happening on the interwebs.
You and me are one and the same, Morgan. I totally agree. We reluctantly gave our 10-year-old a phone last year, and it was something that we really struggled with. I think all parents are really struggling with this. And we let her know that with this phone, we were going to be reading text messages.
Right.
So we check her phone every night. And I think it's something that exhausted parents might not want to do every night, but it is the world we live in. Mm-hmm. And I think for safety purposes and just being able to get a hold of them, they might need a phone. Social media is another piece. I think that's something different. But yeah, I attribute it to we have them get their learner's permit and drive with us for a year before we give them a driver's license. And social media is a very powerful thing. So for the first year, I am going to be up in your social media feed. I'm going to follow you. If you feel like you need to check private messages, I think that is something that you can establish with your child, but just let them know it's temporary until they earn your trust.
At least the first year.
I said first year. That's lenient, girl.
Right, that's generous.
Forever, ever.
Something that I read and I thought was so valid was, sometimes parents overestimate the dangers of the outside world. Like, you've got to have the phone, you're taking the bus, whatever. And they underestimate the dangers that are in the online world. You mentioned following your child on social media and being transparent about it and saying, look, I am going to do this. I am going to be up in your business. And there is no such thing as privacy. How does that potentially backfire on a parent?
I think it can backfire if you're doing it maybe when you don't necessarily have cause. Yeah. We were talking a little bit before about how to know when to intervene. If you see radical changes in their behavior, in their mental health, and how they're performing at school, if they give you reason, then I think, all bets are off. I'm going to be really finely tuned micromanaging this process until we get it figured out. But I think that if you've raised your child and you feel like they're pretty competent, you can give them some trust. You can let them have this social life, and that might have to play out on social media at some point.
Yeah, it's really interesting, this sort of tension between actual access to the content and then monitoring the content that does make it through. Life coach Elizabeth Pearson for us there. Great tips. Thank you, Elizabeth. We really appreciate it. And stay with us because you're watching NBC News Daily.